let's get into Qualcomm. So Qualcomm came in, did 7 or 8 announcements. They were primarily around automotive and an extension of their PC SoCs. Dan.
Well, first of all, it's really interesting, Pat. A year ago, you were on stage with a whole bunch of the executives of the OEMs on the devices side. It was the year of the AI PC. You know, being self-critical and going back in a year of review, I never said emphatically that we were going to have a super cycle, but I think I was probably more optimistic about how the year would go than it went. I will mostly blame software for being wrong, because if software roadmaps had met what I'd expected, I think there would have been more allure to people buying AI PCs. And the reason I'm pointing this out while we talk about Qualcomm is Qualcomm is obviously the new, exciting, disruptive, ARM-based entrant that was going to create the new future of these Copilot plus PCs. And the kind of year in review is you ended up with a really exciting silicon year, a race and an arms between Intel, ARM-based Qualcomm, AMD, and now to a lesser extent, MediaTek and NVIDIA, all sort of ripping and racing towards this era. But here's the question and the point, Pat, is, Qualcomm comes out with a slightly lower cost mid-tier to address probably a part of the market that their early elite product was going to be too expensive for, part of which is because we're getting into this era of AI PCs or Copilot plus PCs. Part of it is because what's ended up happening, at least so far, because of maybe software not quite meeting the moment yet is an important word here, is we've ended up with needing to address price points again to be able to attract a bigger market, to try to accelerate updates. Because what we do have, Pat, are really powerful next generation devices with really good battery life. We did end up getting that. And in the process, we ended up getting also some of the best out of, and we'll talk more about Intel later, but some of the best out of some of the chip makers to really get back to competing. Because in the beginning, Pat, it looked like Qualcomm was just going to run away in terms of specs. And now we've got a three-headed race, and we've got some really competitive parts. But the new X product is going to hit that middle price point, Pat. And I think that's all about accelerating people moving over and buying in and utilizing, because I still think there's a lot of questions on what software is going to drive people and how much on-device stuff happens in terms of it being a value add for the consumer. I get why cloud companies want it. It's expensive to have all these things being done in the cloud, but do the buyers notice the latency and care about having to go to the cloud to do a query on ChatGPT, Perplexity, or any other language model? I think that's something we got to discuss, Pat, and we'll spend some more time talking about that, I'm sure, over the course of the year. On the other side of this, Qualcomm has been an absolutely amazing journey in automotive. And the announcements keep ticking. And while we did hear NVIDIA seem to have a more bullish forecast, Intel has talked a little bit about some automotive progress it is making. Qualcomm has been, over the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years, the de facto or undisputed winner of the automotive opportunity, building a nearly $50 billion automotive pipeline. Business is growing every quarter. They've had more design wins. And here at CES, they just furthered partnerships with Google, partnerships with Garmin for, GPS and unified cabin, with Tata, which of course is a big India opportunity for the company and in other markets. Partnerships with Alpine, Amazon, Leap, Mahindra. I'm just reading this, by the way. Hyundai, Royal Enfield, all doing more with AI-powered cabin. They have a new partnership with Panasonic for the cockpit. Pat, they're also showing more and more how generative AI can work in the vehicle. And of course, we know you can't have full language models in there. So there's a lot of work to be done to synthesize these models down to make them power efficient enough to be run at the edge. So this is something Qualcomm's well equipped for. The customers, the wins, the designs, the partnerships indicate its success. It's continued progress as I see it. It was very like a high volume of sort of what I call small movers that all show Qualcomm's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, so I like to look through photos of old photos that I took at shows years ago, and literally 4 to 5 years ago, I didn't know that Qualcomm was even looking at ADAS, and they asked me if I wanted to take a ride in their ADAS infused car. And that was a huge surprise to me. And here we are. They're the backlog stands at $45 billion, and in their financial analyst day, they put $4 billion in automotive revenue by fiscal 2026, and then doubling that to $8 billion fiscal 29, really driven by ADAS and even fully autonomous driving. And their announcements here were really just, I'll call them tuck-in announcements. This Snapdragon Ride Flex SoC with Hyundai, important movement. It'll be interesting to see on the software side, Qualcomm versus NVIDIA and what they can do. NVIDIA has made most of their moves, I would say, in the autonomous driving. Qualcomm has taken most of NVIDIA's dashboard design wins. And Qualcomm has always been a huge player, and obviously the connectivity, whether it's 3G, LTE, or 5G, inside of the car. So strategically, the company just gets moving forward here. One thing I want to focus here is on this new Snapdragon X. So with adding X, now there's 3 tiers, right? You go all the way from $600 to whatever, $2,000 with the entire Qualcomm Snapdragon platform. It's going to be really important for Qualcomm this year to do a few things. So first and foremost, they really have to nail education as it relates to performance. And what I mean by that is Qualcomm doesn't win all the performance figures all the time. But what they do is they win most of the speed races when it's not plugged in, like you'd expect a notebook to do. Can they punch that through there? Qualcomm has to scale, right? It was a challenge to do that before because of a couple things going on. First of all, price points. But now as low as $599, you're going to see platforms out there. You also have a combination of desktops and notebooks that will be coming out. I did say last year that I expected the Super Sky Gold to start sometime in the second half. What I didn't factor in is that Microsoft would miss their software schedules of their premier AI feature by 8 months. So Recall was supposed to be out May, June. GA, it is still not. It is a very useful tool out there that I use every day, and I think it's pretty good. But it was severely delayed. So, and the second thing is to start getting traction inside of the enterprises to take advantage of the Windows 10 to Windows 11 transition. Qualcomm is investing a tremendous amount of money in there, and but it's going to be tough. AMD and Intel are running serious plays in the enterprise and don't want to give up any real estate whatsoever. You have Intel playing defense and AMD playing hardcore offense. So anyways, good stuff from Qualcomm.